Well, greetings and salutations, everyone, and welcome to this night-ending bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost you a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into this night-ending bonus upload, shall we? Alright guys, today's first experience on the paranormal side is an abduction case that is beyond reality and may just be the inspiration for The Matrix. You guys be the judge. This abduction case from 1974 may just be the inspiration for the movie The Matrix. Name, date, location. Carl Higdon, 40 years old, October 25th. 1974, Rawlins, Wyoming. While hunting in Medicine Bow National Forest, Higdon entered an area where he heard no animals but saw 5 motionless elk. He shot at the bull elk, but the bullet dropped to the ground about 50 feet away, as if it had struck a wall. A twig snapped and Higdon saw a human-like being, about 6 foot 2 inches tall, standing in the shade of the tree. The man spoke, barely moving his lips. He said his name was Ayuso. He offered Higdon a package of 4 capsules, supposedly food pills. Higdon swallowed them without resistance and agreed to go with Ayuso. The being pointed his arm and Higdon found himself on board a craft. The being's face appeared chinless, and he had only 3 teeth each in his upper and lower jaw, a flat nose, no visible ears, thin, bristling hair on top. He was bow-legged and no hands were visible. His right arm ended in a cone-shaped device that Higdon took to be a gun. The being wore a black coverall, black shoes, belts across his chest, and another around his waist, which had a star-like emblem as a buckle and a small apron-like flap underneath. He never allowed Higdon to come too near or to see him from the side or rear. A transparent cubicle, 4 seats, a control panel, a mirror, and a symbol, thought to be a map of some kind. The 5 elk stood frozen in a cage behind him, and another being like Ayuso was in a small room estimated 5 foot by 7 foot and 7 foot high. On board activities, Higdon found himself with a helmet on his head, strapped to a chair in a cubicle. When Ayuso pointed his arm to the controls, the cubicle began to move and Higdon saw the earth as a round ball. The cubicle landed almost instantaneously on another planet. It was dark, and they landed near a tower with a flashing light, so brilliant that it hurt Higdon's eyes. The tower was conical, like a Christmas tree, about 100 feet tall, and made a buzzing sound. Otherworldly environment, the plaza surrounded the tower, and 5 human-like beings, a middle-aged man, a young girl, 2 teenage girls, and a teenage boy were standing conversing, apparently unaffected by the blinding light. The second being disappeared when they landed, Ayuso floated out with Higdon into the tower and up an elevator. They entered a room where Higdon stood on a platform while a shield-like device moved out of the wall, positioned itself in front of him for several minutes, then retracted back into the wall. Communication. The being identified himself as Ayuso, apparently communicated to Higdon that the capsules were food and instructed him to ingest them. In the otherworldly environment, after the device appeared to examine him, Higdon was told that he was not what they needed, and that they would take him back. At various times during the encounter, Higdon was told that they came 163,000 light miles using gravity, levitation, propulsion to explore the Earth and find animals to breed for food. Ayuso spoke of a different sun and seas on their planet that were inadequate for supporting life. While on Earth, Ayuso avoided direct sunlight because the potential sunburn damage. The return. After examination, they re-entered the cubicle and Ayuso returned Higdon's rifle. He also pointed his cone hand gun and floated the package of capsules out of Higdon's pocket. Higdon next found himself standing on a rocky slope back in Wyoming. He fell and injured himself before finding his truck in a place some distance from where he had left it, and in terrain too rough for him to drive out of. It was 6 to 6:30 p.m. A rescue party found him at 11:30 p.m. The aftermath. Higdon was confused and disoriented, barely able to recognize his wife or where he was. He was very sensitive to touch and light. His eyes were red and watery, and he had no appetite. He was hospitalized at 2:30 in the morning on October 26th. The following morning, he had a ravenous appetite. While in the hospital, he began relating his experiences. For a while, he had a problem with equilibrium. Later, his tuberculosis scars were no longer visible on x-rays, and he no longer suffered from kidney stones. Higdon speculated that he was rejected either because he was too old or his vasectomy made him unsuitable. If you'd like more information on this case, read Leo Sprinkle, Investigation of the Alleged UFO Experience of Carl Higdon in Haines, 1979, page 225 through 357. Today's second experience on the paranormal side. This happened many years ago, but due to a recent injury to my eye, I decided to share it. To preface, I don't believe in the paranormal, but to me, it's really fun to think about. And this experience, I had definitely was a paranormal vibe to it. I was in high school in Northern California, and my closest friend was having a family reunion that I was invited to. At around 9 p.m., the last family had arrived, and for some reason, they didn't have their daughter with them. I literally don't know why they left her. So they asked us to get her. Now, Tyson just got his car, and when you finally have that freedom, anything is a good excuse for a road trip, and they live 2.5 hours away. They gave us money for gas, so we pile in the car and we're on our way without a second thought. We've got music going, snacks, all around, just enjoying a good time. Finally, we get off the highway and find ourselves in a secluded, forested town. We find the last turn and are going down a tiny dirt road with thick, thick forest on both sides. Eventually, the radio starts to cut away a little bit, and I turn it down so we aren't listening to static. But this little dirt road just goes on and on to the point of absurdity. So me and Tyson start joking about it. Who in the world would come out this far to build a house? Then, and this will stick with me for the rest of my life, this overpowering smell comes into the car. Copper, so thick it's almost suffocating. were both retching, and it made my stomach hurt. It was so heavy in the air, I felt like it could be cut with a knife. We kept going through, and eventually we made it to a wooden bridge about 20 feet long. As we kept on going, the smell dissipated, and the radio came back on. We eventually made it to the clearing with about 5 houses, which we immediately started laughing about. Not only did they come all this way out here to build one house, but they built 5 in the middle of the woods. Why? We finally pick his cousin up, her name's Shy, and immediately ask her about the smell coming in. She has no clue of what I'm talking about. There has never been a smell before. She gets in the car and is about our age, and she has the same taste in music. A song comes on that she likes, and she asks to turn it up, so we do. And now it's almost midnight. We're blasting music back down the absurdly long road, back the way we came. As expected, the radio starts to cut out little by little. Then the smell hits us again. Not gradually, though. More like smacking into a wall made of pennies. I immediately turn to Shy and ask again. And she is absolutely disgusted and assures us this is not normal. But as she is saying that, we come back onto the bridge. And as we are making our way over, suddenly the car stops. I turn to Tyson and ask, what's he doing? It's not me, and he lifts his knee higher to show that he is stepping on the gas. And that's when I hear a terrible sound of tires not making connection with the ground. And the car starts ever so slightly lifting from the back. We all immediately look back out the window and are met with nothing but darkness. The angle we are at isn't anything extreme, just enough to feel your weight shift. But whatever it is lifting a Chevy Tahoe. Shy immediately starts screaming, and admittedly I am freaking out a little too. And the sound of static, a girl screaming, the engine, tires spinning freely are getting to me. I'm frantically looking out every window trying to assess the situation, but I don't see anything. And Tyson yells out in panic, and just then, suddenly, the back end drops. The car lurches forward, and we are very nearly almost running into a tree, but thankfully Tyson regains control. We sped out of there as fast as we could, and very quickly the smell cleared, and we found ourselves out of that forest and back onto a paved road. When the radio came back, the mood was entirely too wrong. So I just turned it off as we drove down the lonely highway in silence. We finally make it to a gas station and immediately went to the back of the Tahoe to see a giant dent covering the most of the center. And then Tyson breaks the silence. I think I saw it. Shy then replied, I did too. Now, I didn't see anything at all, but when I pressed for information, it was clear they didn't want to talk about it. Years later, when I brought it up one day to Tyson, he swore he saw what looked like hooves very briefly in the side view mirror. Being a skeptic, I'm not sure I really trust him, but I also have absolutely zero clue what could have lifted the back of a Tahoe. Honestly, I've told this story to many of my friends, and never once have I or anyone else thought of something logical that makes sense. And paranormal makes even less sense. Why would a paranormal being capable of lifting a Tahoe let us go? Really wish I had just gotten out of the car and checked out what happened. It's a question that has stuck with me my entire life. That's a strange one. Now, if it was sulfur and hooves, I'd almost say demon, something along that line. But copper, I vaguely recall something copper scented, some paranormal story I heard a long time ago, but it's not connecting. Maybe, just maybe, they mistook the smell of sulfur for copper. They were young. Who knows? Goat man? I don't know. Today's third experience on the paranormal side. First, I should note that we are a non-religious family, and there was very little talk about the paranormal or other such topics growing up, although I've since taken an interest in many related subjects. When my sister, 3 years younger than me, was about 17, she started screaming one night. My parents and I rushed into her room, and she had seen a figure standing at the foot of her bed, which rose upward and disappeared just before we turned on the light. She reckoned that the figure was quite short and probably an old woman. She was able to describe the clothing, but not the face. My sister was crying floods of tears and shaking. We weren't sure what to make of it all, but her reaction confirmed that she was not lying. At the very least, we knew she believed she had seen something. Unwilling to accept that she dreamt it, we suggested to her that it must have been her grandmother returning to see her. A positive spin on all that. Maybe it was our grandmother, who knows? I felt uneasy in the house for a long time. I'm slightly embarrassed to say I slept with the light on. Anyway, things went back to normal, and then about a year later it happened again. Only this time, she said it was a man in dark clothing. The time, the distress, the reaction identical, only the description of the figure was different. Roll on a few years, and I had moved out. My sister calls me one day and says, "Can I move my stuff into your old room?" "I keep seeing people regularly," she continued. "Dad even lost his temper one night and shouted to the ghost to leave me alone." This bit was really weird for me to hear. My dad is a stoic, non-believing man. Absolutely weird. Anyway, she switched rooms, and to my knowledge, didn't have any more trouble in my parents' home. I never liked to ask my sister too much about it in the intervening months and years. I know she doesn't like talking about it. After a few more years, she had gotten married and moved into her house with her husband. I went out drinking with them a few weeks ago. The topic came up, and much to my surprise, her husband said, "Yeah, she still sees people." Grabs my arm at night and says, "Look, there's someone standing there." But I can never see anything, and it freaks me out. That about sums up her experiences. My sister is an honest and reasonable, intelligent woman. She's got a good career in her own family, no history of schizophrenia in the family, and no other signs that my sister is ill or dishonest. She does not brag or make any spectacle of her encounters. Only her close family knows, if anything. I think she's embarrassed about it. As far as I know, all of her encounters have been with seemingly benign entities. They just seem to make their presence known and then leave. Today's fourth paranormal experience. I have a very interesting experience that I have not been able to come up with an explanation for since it's happened. I like to think as myself as a cynic when it comes to the paranormal. I want to believe in it. However, I am not religious and will not convince myself until I know for certain there is no scientific explanation for the happenings. And this is the closest I think I have gotten. My family decided we would go on an organized ghost hunt at one of the neighboring towns. It was late at night, and there were 3 sections to this. The first involved using Ouija board type things with a glass. Nothing happened on this one. The second involved trying to reach out to spirits in a dark room. Nothing happened on this one either. The experiences come from the third section, which was a very old courtroom, and we used technology. Firstly, there were 3 digital thermometers set up, and one of our family members sat below one. These thermometers flashed when temperatures spontaneously dropped from room temp, supposedly a sign of ghost. All of a sudden, this family member jumped up, sort of spooked, and moved seats with the organizers were explaining to us what we were going to do. He proclaimed that he suddenly felt extremely cold and tingly. Lo and behold, the thermometer was also flashing, and showing very low temps right by where he was sitting. That was odd enough, but the second experience was just as odd. I was in a room by myself with my uncle. I had an EMF reader that lit up in the presence of electromagnetic field. I do know these devices work. However, I don't know how legitimate the specific one I was holding was. I have my own at home, and it does react to real electrical sources, such as my PC and plug sockets, etc. The other device I had was something called a spirit box, which was supposed to detect words ghosts were saying and read them out. This device didn't convince me at all, and I'm still not fully convinced by it, but certainly more curious about it. I was asking questions, and the EMF reader was flashing in accordance with these questions. It seemed to work, but there was no telling whether it was legitimate or not. However, I wanted to push the boundaries of the yes or no questions to see how realistic it all was. If a ghost was real, surely it can answer a binary question as long as I give it two options and the corresponding amount of flashes on the EMF meter for answers, not just yes or no. So I did. I asked aloud, "Are you a man or a woman?" Flash once for a man, flash twice for a woman. At the time, I was not convinced this would work, as I'm skeptic. However, the EMF reader flashed twice, and then within 5 seconds of that, the spirit box displayed and read out the word female. Two completely independent devices simultaneously confirmed the answer I supposedly got. That was a big deal for me, and still is to this day. I cannot figure out an explanation for that, and the two devices remained consistent for the entire session. I hope for an existence of something beyond life, and I hope this was my first glimpse at some actual proof for myself. Definitely not a spirit box, because the way he said, a spirit box does not have a screen. An ovulus has a screen, and an ovulus only says one word at a time. A spirit box, as many of you know, when I did my video, produces it's a radio, essentially, is what it is. You can adjust the rate of pickup on it. You can have it track or scan in reverse or forward, AM, FM. I have a 2-channel one, so I can do AM, FM, one in reverse, one in forward. The speed, there's a temperature recorder on there as well. But an ovulus is a small box-like thing, and it usually just says a one-word response, and that's what I believe they were using. I wasn't there, but the way he described it is what an ovulus would be and would do. Very cool device. And for those of you who know, I've got 4 devices for ghost hunting. My next is going to be a REM pod and an ovulus, and I am super excited about doing some ghost hunting. I actually just reached out to Corey from the Conjuring House, and I'm hopefully going to have something set up for a kind of, I don't want to call it a ghost hunt, just maybe a communication with whatever lies in that very haunted house and vicinity of the, the land around the Conjuring House is also very, very haunted. The King Philip's War was on that land. A lot of people have died in that area. There's supposedly a witch, Bathsheba, who is Bathsheba Sherman, who killed children with a pin sewing needle actually into the skull of children. But anyway, I'm looking forward to that, but I'm not going to do anything until I have the REM pod and Ovulus. And then my tools in my toolbox will be complete. Tonight's final experience on the paranormal side. Back in 2001, a couple of days after my mom had given birth to my brother, she brought him home from the maternity. I was 7 at the time. My brother's crib was in my parents' bedroom, right next to their bed. The first night of my newborn brother being home, my dad was working a night shift, so I went to sleep next to my mom, as I usually did when my dad would be working nights. Around 2 or 3 in the morning, Mom and I both woke up at the same time and looked at each other, confused as to why we woke up, realizing that my brother was still fast asleep and not crying. We listened for any other noises that may have woken us up, but nothing. Not a minute later, this whooshing, loud noise fills the room. We feel a strong breeze/wind, then hear the whooshing sound again, this time closer to my brother's crib. My mom jumps out of bed, freaking out that somehow the window was left open and a bird had gotten in. Now that whooshing sound was exactly like wings flapping, but it was more like massive wings flapping, not a regular bird. And the gust of wind it created was also massive. Lights go on, my brother is awake now, but was not scared by the noise or the wind, just kind of looking around the room. My mom starts looking for birds when I point out the window is closed. She still makes me get up and have a look around with her for anything that could explain it. We had a chat about it afterward, and she told me that as soon as she got over the shock, she heard a voice telling her it's okay, just as she was about to get up and check on my brother. At the moment, she assumed I was trying to calm her down, but when I denied, she realized it didn't sound like me either. I also heard it's okay, and it sounded genuinely reassuring. Worth adding, we heard/felt the winging thing come on, but heard nothing or felt it leave. We stayed up for the rest of the night, waiting for something else to happen, and nothing did, while the noise and all scared us. Initially, we both felt relaxed, relieved, content, and happy. All at the same time. It's hard to describe the feeling. Mind you, the whole thing happened in like 10 seconds, but that weird feeling stayed with us for the rest of the day. When my dad came home and was told the story, he was genuinely worried, and my mom just told him that it was okay. He has nothing to worry about. His puzzled look that my mom didn't join him in being worried. She just said, "Trust me, I have a good feeling about this." Now, I don't know why she said it like that, but at the time, I completely understood it. It's been a long time since this happened, but it's still very clear in both mine and my mom's memories. I've tried to look this up throughout years, but came up empty. Well, there you have it, folks, this night-ending bonus. I hope you all enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Some just absolutely terrifying paranormal experiences. Guys, thank you. It really does mean the world to me that you guys support this channel, and it does keep this channel growing and going, and it honestly gives people a chance and a place to share their experiences and theories judgment-free, simply treated with the respect that we all deserve. Thank you. Please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, our pets, our family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the answers, and God bless.